I'm Steve Colella, and I am the owner of MDP Management, and I manage 3 apartment complexes that are co-sponsored by NAMI of San Antonio and Endeavors, Inc. I've managed the 3 properties since 1999, or in the case of Viceroy Village, when it was built and opened in 2001.
How did Viceroy Village get built? Were you familiar with who was involved, and was there any church involvement, for example?
Well, all 3 of the properties were built through the joint venture of the co-sponsors, and back then it was Urban Ministries, which has evolved into being Endeavors, Inc. and NAMI. And at the time that Viceroy was built, it was primarily people from Urban Ministries that were involved in it. I was not a participant in the development of it or the organization of it. I just took over the company I was working for at the time, took over the management of the property at the time that it opened. And we leased it up and have continued to manage it since the day it opened.
Uh-huh.
And the same with Regal and Monarch Place. They were all managed by my former employee, Domicile Property Management, from the time that they were opened.
Can you tell me about the HUD program that made it possible?
Well, when Monarch Place was built, it was built under a program called the HUD 202 PRAC, P-R-A-C. And it was a program that HUD had for properties to be built by nonprofits to be dedicated to either seniors or people with chronic mental illness. And eventually, after Monarch Place was built under that 202 program, then HUD created the 811 PRAC program, which was how Regal Village and Viceroy Village were put together with HUD. Monarch Place, because it was a 202, had a mortgage and still does have a mortgage on it that is paid every month. And then Regal Village and Viceroy Village, under the 811 PRAC program that HUD created, was a different type of program where there was a mortgage created and acknowledged by the co-sponsors, but there was no mortgage payments made. And after 35 years, as long as the co-sponsor followed all the rules and regulations in their agreement with HUD, then HUD would deed the property to the co-sponsors, and the mortgage would be forgiven. And both Viceroy and Regal are still in that program. Regal was built in 1998, and Viceroy was built in 2001.
What are the conditions in order to satisfy that? What are the...
Well, there's a regulatory agreement that HUD and the sponsors agreed to that is several pages long, and it dictates what the responsibilities are. Basically, you have to provide safe and sanitary housing for people with chronic mental illness, and you have to go through a process to determine that they do in fact have that illness. The application process is lengthy. It involves getting information and verification from doctors. And the property needs to establish what the residents' income is and qualify them as a low-income person that meets the requirements of chronic mental illness. And then they have to be recertified every year, and all the records updated, and all their verifications updated, and it goes through regular physical inspections performed by HUD, and periodic management and operational review inspections also performed by HUD. And as long as all those standards are met and maintained for that 35-year period, then that would be the agreement that they had being completed.
Could you share with us what the person who moves in and lives there, what they must do?
Well, they have to go through an application process, and they have to provide a reasonable amount of information so that they can be qualified to live at the property. And then they have to agree to follow the terms of the HUD lease agreement for 811 Prax. And they also have to agree to follow all of the community policies that are set up, and essentially be a good neighbor to everybody who's there. We have people living in some of the properties that have been there for 20 plus years.
Do you find it to be easy to manage or difficult to manage when you have this many people who have a chronic mental illness living together?
I don't find it to be a problem. The only time there is a problem, generally speaking, is if someone decides that they don't need to take their meds anymore. As long as they take their meds, you can't tell the difference between them and me or my site managers or anybody else, because they're everyday normal folks that have learned how to and deal with the fact that they have chronic mental illness. Because the properties are small, they range from 18 to 24 units, depending upon which one it is. The development of community amongst the people who live there is significant, in the sense that they all seem to be become friends with each other, some more so than others, and but there's a true development of community on a property that size. And I think that that's really important, because I've learned from talking to professionals that people with chronic mental illness they think that they may be different than everybody else, and when they live in a property like this, they find out that that's not the truth, that there are other people like them, and they can associate with them and communicate with them and be friendly and enjoy each other.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned site managers. Do these people live there, or do they commute there? Or?
Yeah, the site manager is a full-time person who, in the agreement with HUD, has to live on the property. And so there actually is one unit on each property dedicated for the manager, and they do live there. So they're at the property, essentially 24/7. They're not tied to their apartment. They can go out and do what they need after hours, and even during office hours. They have to leave occasionally to perform tasks, for the operation of the property. But we keep them set up with answering services, so if something does happen, they can be reached, and they all have mobile cell phones, and so they're accessible. And if somebody goes on to take some time off or is sick, for whatever reason, one of the other two properties covers that person during that time frame. So we've got good coverage in that respect, and there always is someone to contact 24/7.
Are they certified as apartment managers?
Well, they're all trained as apartment managers, and then NAMI has a program called Family to Family, and I have them attend that, which is like a 6 or 8 week program, a couple of nights a week, and that my people go through that to learn more about how to deal with and communicate with and understand people with chronic mental illness, and it's been an extremely good tool. In fact, I even have one maintenance man that works all 3 properties, and I've sent him to that same family to family course so he understands it, because the maintenance man has to deal with the residents too when they have issues that need to be taken care of, and they need to know how to communicate with him also.
Is it possible that these kinds of apartment complexes, there could be more of them, need for more?
Well, there's absolutely a huge need for more of them. Part of the problem is that it's a problem. About 8 years ago, HUD stopped the PRAC program. They recently have announced that they started it. And so applications made by co-sponsors to get some more funds and build some more properties in San Antonio. Exciting in the sense that it is evidently going to be being restarted, and because there's definitely a need. There's too many people with chronic mental illness living on the street or can't find a place to live because they don't have the proper background and credit information to be able to live in an apartment, and they really need to be in a more suitable place, such as one of these properties.
If more of these are going to happen, are there some things that need to occur from the point of view of you as a manager of these apartments in terms of people making the transition into moving in, or something folks need while they're living there that isn't happening right now, that would make it run better or have a better outcome for the people that are living there?
Well, the properties that I run right now, none of them are required to provide any social or medical services to the resident. The individual resident, their own responsibility to find services, or their family members can help them do that, or their doctors or their counselors. And moving forward, I would think that adding that type of service, which would require funding through the state or federal funding or even the city or county, would be very helpful in order to be able to have some type of staffing at the property that's skilled in that area, whether it be on a full-time or part-time basis. And I could see that as being a tremendous step forward to help these folks.
We've had some discussion that there is some strong sentiment in the community here for not in my backyard. And we find, however, that these apartment complexes are tucked in around large subdivisions and they're near all kinds of services. So why does this work versus some other things not work, or anything you might have to say to folks that say not in my backyard?
Well, people have a misconception about people with chronic mental illness in the first place, and they don't like anything associated with HUD because they think that that's everything that is associated with HUD is like public housing and bad people that don't work and live off of the government, and they don't want them in their backyard. These properties are small, as I said earlier, 18 to 24 units. They're in decent areas and highly populated. And at the time the process was done, the city councilman for the area and the county commissioner and the state congressman and representative, all those guys were talked to, and the neighborhood associations were talked to and explained what the program was, and there was acceptance. And they have that all in writing, and it's part of their application to HUD to when they went through this process to provide that kind of information so that HUD would know that the neighborhood people were accepting to the idea of having it.
Well, it sounds to me like HUD has had a lot of input over the years and has done a good deal of listening based on how they seem to have put things together in terms of making these things happen. Do you see it that way, or do you see that, and I don't want you to criticize, I'm more looking at what you see are some things that HUD could do, and whatever you think you would like to share, if anything.
HUD has their rules, and they stick by their rules. I mean, I managed 3 of these properties in the Conroe area, in small towns around Conroe, and I saw in one of those towns where HUD rejected 3 different sites because it was too close to a railroad track. Mm-hmm. And just things like that. But they've got their rules, and I understand why. They're not difficult to deal with, but they're kind of one-sided. It's my rule, my way or the highway. So you have to understand that going in, and you've got to be patient and listen to what they say and follow along to what they think it needs to be. That's just the way HUD's been around forever. So.
Just one last question. Is there anything else you'd like to share, like to say that people might want to know?
Well, I manage 10 of these properties now. As I said earlier, they're a very needed and good program. I think that people need to open their eyes up, government officials and city officials. They need to open their eyes up and take a look, at what's going on around and see that this is a good way to help this segment of society and the population. And there's really not any other, to my knowledge, good programs like this that are really beneficial. There's, some tax credit properties have built, properties with a couple hundred units, and they can get more points if they put some 811 prac units in the property. And so if, for example, if they build 200 units and add 5% of the units designated for people with chronic mental illness, so then you've got 10 of the units designated to that segment of the population. But those 10 people are scattered all over 200 unit property, and there's no way to develop community. And on the other side, they can't designate 10 units just to be, side by side, to just be for people with chronic mental illness, because that violates fair housing. So it's kind of a catch-22. I think the smaller size property, the 15 to 25 unit property, is the way to go, because it brings the people together, and it's easy to manage, and everybody seems to get along well. We have minimal problems in those properties, and I've been managing them for well over 20 years. And so anyway, that's my opinion. One other thing I'll say is I don't manage them to make money. My management fees are minimal. I manage them because there's a good purpose and a cause involved that I like. And so that's why I do it. I just recently took over 2 more of them, so now I've got 10. And I'll continue to take them on, as they become available for people looking for management.
Thank you.
You're welcome.